All right, guys, what's going on? Welcome back to the Everything College Football Podcast. Today, me and Nick will be doing our preview and prediction for the Birmingham Bowl between ECU and Coastal Carolina. Pirates, 8-point favorites, 59.5 is the over-under. Tuesday, December 27th, 6:45 p.m. Eastern Time on ESPN from the wonderful Protective Stadium in Birmingham. First meeting ever between these two schools. Looking at the Coastal Carolina offense, Nick, a lot's going on with this football team. Jeremy Chadwell, head coach, he's gone to Liberty. Grayson McCall, he's in the portal. Best offensive lineman Willie Lampkin's also in the portal. This is an offense that struggled in McCall's 2 games he missed due to injury. Bryce Carpenter and Jarrett Guest is likely to start. They averaged over 6 yards per play against a pretty good Southern Miss defense in a win. But the next week, they had only 183 yards of offense and a 40-point thumping on the road against James Madison. So this offense was clearly a different unit. And even when McCall came back, they were just getting brutalized in that first half against Troy, put up some garbage time numbers trying to claw their way back into that one in the second half. But there you go, though. You have 2 quarterbacks that I think are plenty capable, but they didn't exactly step up in McCall's absence. So it's really going to be about the running game. C.J. Beasley, Reese White, 487 yards and 4 touchdowns for him. Beasley, 700-plus yards and 4 touchdowns. This is a running attack that is much better when McCall is under center because he has that vertical speed that can certainly expose a defense. 162 yards per game for this unit. Then you look at a receiving core that's actually pretty impressive. You were wondering who's going to step up this year. Sam Pinkney, a Georgia State transfer, filled in a role significantly. 67 grabs, 117 yards, 3 scores. Jared Brown, a freshman, 47 for almost 800 yards and 6 scores. And then Tyson Mobley as a third guy. He's been pretty good, almost 500 yards himself. This is an offense, Nick, that when they're fully healthy, it's very good. They only average 29 points per game. Certainly a bit of a disappointing year compared to how it's been the last 2. But I think coming into this game, they really have their back against the wall because they didn't play great without McCall. And now he's in the portal, as is, again, their best lineman. And, of course, their great head coach who, did so much for this program is now gone. I'm trying to get a read on this offense, and it's not really pretty.
There's a whole lot of changes going on in the Myrtle Beach area right now for Coastal Carolina. Grayson McCall, no doubt in saying that he's been one of the best quarterbacks to grace that conference in recent years. Talented quarterback, someone in the Power Fives could get a fantastic quarterback out of the portal. The big schools are certainly going to come calling for Grayson McCall. But now it's kind of like, what's next? Jarrett Guest has not played well in his limited action. 44% completion percentage, 1 touchdown, 4 interceptions. Just not good. Bryce Carpenter, we haven't seen a whole lot of him. He's only got 6 passing attempts so far this season. So really, I don't know exactly what to expect of these quarterbacks. They're certainly young. There is some potential there, but we have not seen anything out of them. Losing Willie Lampkin as well is not helping things at all for this team. Of course, they do have some weapons that certainly can help out their quarterback. I think Pinkney is fantastic with nearly 1,000 yards receiving and the 3 scores for him. Jared Brown's been a quietly good player. So same thing with Tyson Mobley. So there is some serious talent on this offense, but they really didn't live up to expectations that you thought they would. They scored 29.1 points per game, which is not a bad number by any stretch of the imagination, but you would have expected more out of this high-flying Coastal offense that in the 2 years previously were fantastic under their coach who has now left for the Liberty job, Caldwell. A lot of changes going on with this team. There's going to be a whole new faces next year. I really think that this team is just not quite where they need to be. We see it in the last 2 results, 7 points and 26 points in blowout losses against Troy and JMU, a lot of garbage time points against Troy. So I got to figure this offense is going to struggle against East Carolina here.
Now you look at the ECU offense, numbers are quite similar, 30.8 points per game, a little bit more yardage, 459 in that area, but I think their passing attack is just a great unit. I was very excited for this offense coming into the year, and I guess they were on par with expectations, certainly didn't exceed them by any means. Holton Allers, though, this guy's been around forever, 3,400 yards, 23 touchdowns, 5 picks. He's also ran for a couple of scores as well. This is a unit that's got plenty of versatility. Keaton Mitchell in the backfield, 7.5 yards per carry. That's an impressive number. He's got 1,300-plus yards. God damn it. He's got 1,300-plus yards, 13 touchdowns. This was a nice dynamic duo when Rajee Harris was healthy. I do not believe he's going to be getting to go in this game. But I think the most important part of this offense is the receiving core. Isaiah Winstead, 82 grabs, 1,013 yards, 4 touchdowns for him. C.J. Johnson knocking on the door of a 1,000-yard campaign with a team-high 9 touchdowns. And Ryan Jones at tight end, 41 grabs for 400-plus yards. Versatile offense here, Nick. Guys like Winstead who transferred over, big-time impact for them. This is an offensive line that I think, for the most part, it's been a pretty good unit. Avery Jones at center leads them. I wouldn't say they're exactly, elite by any means, but I think this is a pretty good unit that matches up pretty well here what's your assessment of this ECU offense that, unlike Coastal Carolina, everyone's going to be playing in this game, at least as far as I'm concerned?
Certainly returning all their talent for this bowl game is an absolutely huge help for the Pirates. I like this offense a lot. This is a solid offense that puts up a lot of points. 30 points per game, 459 total yards of offense per game. These are solid numbers. Holden Ahlers is not a bad quarterback at all with 3,400 yards, passing 67.1% completion percentage. Solid numbers for him. Keaton Mitchell carrying the load, getting a lot of touches with 179 attempts. Good for 1,300 yards plus the 13 scores. He's really a great power back. Love the size and speed on him. Winstead, Johnson, Jones, these guys are all solid pass catchers. I like Jones as a tight end, versatile, can do a whole lot there for you with the 4 touchdowns as well. Johnson leading the way with the 9 touchdowns. He's a big target in the red zone. Winstead as well. He's got over 1,000 yards receiving, 12.4 yards per catch. This is a high-flying offense that has a lot of potential. I love the way that they're able to spread the ball out. They got a lot of balance here. They hit you through the air, hit you on the ground. And I think this offense is fantastic and has real potential to put up a lot of points against this Coastal Carolina defense.
Looking at that CCU defense, it's not a good one. I felt like this was a unit that was kind of underrated for how bad it was the last couple of years because everyone was so impressed by the wins and the offense. And this unit quietly was not very good. 30 points per game this year, 412 yards per contest, 282 through the air. And you're going to see that both these passing defenses are 2 of the worst in the country. Dead last in college football in 20-plus pass plays allowed, which is not great considering things we just said about the ECU passing attack. They do have Jordan Strong, though. He's the best cover DB. Pretty lackluster season for him, but this is a guy who can certainly get things clicking when they have some high energy. JT Killen in the middle, 90 tackles, 6 tackles for loss, 4 pass breakups. Adrian Hope, he's been a pretty stellar pass rusher for them. Gerard Clark, 10.5 TFL and 3.5 sacks. He's elite on the interior D-line for them. Biggest concern, though, is Josiah Stewart. He is in the transfer portal, 10.5 tackles for loss for him. He's going to go to a Power 5 school. I do think this defensive line is pretty solid, though. Kennedy Roberts, Jaquan Griffin, they have some good depth. It certainly produces. I think that's one thing that was also pretty underrated in Jeremy Chadwell's tenure is they had some depth on this defense, but they really haven't exactly put it together, I would say. 34 sacks, that's a pretty good number. And then in the secondary, only 9 picks, which, it's not the worst of numbers. But when you look at the secondary, Nick, I think this is a big-time opportunity there for them to struggle. Stewart leaving, that's not going to be good for their pass rush. Hope, though, he's still around along with some impressive nose tackles. So I think they might have an opportunity here against, again, a pretty good offensive line. I think they might be able to win this matchup here. But, regardless, they have to win it or they're going to get flamed in the back end.
This defense has certainly not been good at all. Giving them a ton of yards per game, a lot of points as well. Giving them more points than they're scoring is certainly not a recipe for success if you're a team in college football. Losing a guy like Stewart, certainly a brutal loss. There are a lot of pieces I like, especially the front 7. There are some guys here who I think really do stand out. JT Killen, I like him a lot with the 90 total tackles. I've been impressed with him so far this season. Clark at nose tackle, fantastic size there, 3.5 sacks on the season, plus the 40 tackles for him. Shane Bruce as well, another linebacker, 50 tackles. The secondary just absolutely lets you down. Jordan Strong, we noted him. He's having a bad year. Manny Stokes, not a great season as well for him either. These guys are just struggling. Jacob Porsche as well, not having a good season. This secondary has really let me down. They get beat through the air way too easily. When you got an offense like Eastern Carolina that can kind of move with the offense, kind of hit you through the air, they have good balance there. I think this is going to be a recipe for disaster for Coastal Carolina. I have a feeling that East Carolina can pick them apart through the air. They just don't have the talent in the back end to kind of hold up against this offense, in my opinion.
Yeah, Lance Boykin, a guy who's been good as a pass rusher for them, all around a pretty sound defender. It's probably a guy you're going to look at this year. Or in this game, rather, to really step up. Looking at the ECU defense, when you see how the ECU offense matches up with the Chanticleers defense, you're like, oh man, this is going to be a clinic. And then you see how bad this ECU defense is, and then you're like, yeah, well, maybe not so much. 27 points per game, 411 yards per contest. It's right on par with what CCU averages per contest. Pretty strange there. For the Pirates, though, 24 sacks. Jeremy Lewis, he's their best edge defender, only 3.5 though. This is a unit I honestly expected to be better than they were. I definitely, in the preseason, pointed out how the secondary is probably going to struggle replacing numerous starters. But, man, this bad. 131st in college football in pass defense. That's dead last. 26 touchdowns allowed. That's towards the back end of college football. Malik Fleming, though, at corners having a great year. 3 picks, 41 tackles. Safety Gyro Wilson, Jared Stringer. They're having good years as well. But when it comes to being, an overall bunch, when it comes to playing good coverage, that's just something they seem to lack, Nick. And again, we're just going to see a second or third string quarterback here for Coastal Carolina, but they certainly do have some of the weapons to kind of expose that. I do think this run defense is very well. I mean, we've seen that, week 1 against NC State. And throughout the year, I thought they were pretty good at defending the run. So I think they match up pretty well in that area. But I certainly think there's a big time opportunity for the Chanticleers to kind of expose the secondary. I guess it's not going to be difficult.
Coastal Carolina can definitely hang in this game due to the lack of a talented secondary for East Carolina. I like some of the pieces they have here. I think Julius Woods and Jared Stringer are not bad playing safety at the 82 total tackles for Woods. Stringer's got 62 tackles on the season. Woods has 2 interceptions as well. I think this offense just gets beat way too easily. You saw the numbers there. We read them off. Dead last in passing defense. 26 total touchdowns allowed is a poor number as well. The sacks really just not exactly where they wanted to be. Jeremy Lewis, I expected more out of him. The only 3.5 sacks in the season, 4.5 for Miles Berry, another guy with 2.5 sacks, another linebacker. He has 60 tackles. You expect a little bit more out of him. Elijah Morris on the defensive line, wanted to see a little bit more out of him too. He has 2.5 sacks. Chad Stevens, another guy with 2.5 sacks. You need to see those numbers get higher. There certainly is a possibility that Coastal Carolina can hang around this game by simply picking apart the secondary and looking to hit over top early on due to this fault of the secondary for East Carolina. This defense, the front seven's not bad, kind of like Coastal Carolina, but the secondary really lets this team down. I think that's the story for both these teams. It's kind of just going to come down to which secondary has a better day.
Pretty good way to put it. Keys of the game. Obviously, what you just said, it's going to be the biggest one of all. But I think for Coastal Carolina, you got to find some rhythm on offense. That's something that they certainly lacked against James Madison. Any lingering hangover from Chadwell's departure, along with some of your best players leaving, I think that's something that you're going to look for, and I think that's something that's certainly going to affect them in this game. ECU, find some pass rush to get stops against CCU. We just alluded how bad the secondary is, so best way to make up for that is a lack of pass rush. Despite the lack of experience potentially at quarterback here, I don't think that's going to bother you when you're playing the worst-ranked secondary in CFB. And come out blazing through the air for ECU, because they certainly have that potential. The Chanticleers might not, with the factors we've discussed, but augers and these pass catchers, they certainly have that ability. I think that's what they're going to do. I think they're going to come out and they're going to throw it, 80% of their first how many ever plays in the first half is going to be passing plays. And I think they're going to pour it on 45-31. I'm not sure why this is an 8-point line, especially since the line came down after the announcement of McCall's transfer and some of these other guys. I just don't think this is a good opportunity for CCU, and a lot of people are picking the Chanticleers, Nick, and I just don't understand it. I think this is a big disadvantage for their secondary. Offense is going to struggle to move the ball, even against the defense that has their own issues. I think they're going to just struggle to run the football. The inexperience at quarterback is certainly going to plague them more often than not, and I think ECU is going to win this one potentially by more than 14.
I think the signs definitely point to East Carolina having a strong day. I think that the numbers just are not adding up for Coastal Carolina. Lost their coach, star quarterback out of the portal, best offensive lineman, secondary's poor, freshman quarterback starting. I think there's just too many pieces here for Coastal Carolina to have success. I think the one thing that certainly keeps them in is that East Carolina's secondary is very poor as well. So if Coastal Carolina can find a nice rhythm early on, hit you through the air, find some nice way to get the ball to their talented players on the wide receiving roles, maybe they have a chance. But I think East Carolina is just going to pull away here. I am winning by 10, but it could certainly be by 20. I'm going to go a little more cautious here just because I think the secondaries might balance each other out. And I think whoever wins the battle in the secondary is ultimately going to win the game for this bowl game. I like East Carolina here just because I think there's too much of a headache off the field for Coastal Carolina right now. I feel like too many opt-outs, coach gone, all that. I think this is going to be a game they're not motivated for, and I can see East Carolina easily winning this one. Kind of baffles me that the money is pouring in on Coastal Carolina at this point.
If they can average about 5 or so yards per carry, this will be a very interesting game, very close. That's going to leave that, that secondary to be very vulnerable. As always, Nick, appreciate you joining me.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's it for today's episode, guys. Make sure you like, comment, subscribe. See you next time.